Professor Clixon nervously adjusted his moisture membrane as he watched the first human exchange student stroll into the Grand Hall of Galactic University. The amphibian academic had reviewed the admission documents multiple times, but seeing an actual human in person was different. The human, Zach Thompson, looked deceptively normal as he wandered through the anti-gravity fields, completely ignoring them like they weren't even there. Most new species at least showed some reaction to walking through varying gravity zones. But no, this human just kept walking with that strange rhythmic locomotion they called walking. "Hello. I'm looking for the new species integration office," Zach's voice carried across the hall, causing several floating gas-based students to condense slightly in surprise. Miri 7, the robotic teaching assistant, glided forward. "Greetings, Human Thompson. I am designated as your orientation guide. Please follow my illuminated path to avoid any accidental molecular disruption zones." "Cool, thanks. But you can just call me Zach," he grinned, revealing those strange calcium-based protrusions humans used for mastication. "And don't worry about the safety zones. I read the manual. Earth's radiation levels are way higher than anything you've got here." Professor Clixon's secondary heart missed a beat. The human had read the manual? Most species took at least 3 solar cycles to process the safety protocols. This one had apparently done it during the transport journey. As they moved through the registration process, more students gathered to observe the human. A cluster of energy beings whispered in electromagnetic pulses about how fragile it looked. A group of silicon-based crystalloids refracted light in a pattern that clearly meant they were unimpressed by the soft, water-based organism. "Now then," Miri 7 continued, "we need to process your environmental requirements. Our database seems to be missing some basic information about human needs." "Oh, I'm pretty adaptable," Zach shrugged. "Standard oxygen-nitrogen mix is fine, temperature anywhere between, say, -10 and +40 Celsius. Gravity up to about 3 g is no problem for short periods. Basic stuff." The crystalloids stopped refracting light entirely. One of the energy beings accidentally discharged a small lightning bolt. Professor Clixon found his voice. "Mr. Thompson. Zach, you're saying you can function in temperature variations of 50 degrees. Sure, with the right clothes. I mean, that's nothing compared to some places on Earth. You should see Siberia in winter, or Death Valley in summer. Now those are temperature extremes." "Death Valley," Miri 7's processors whirred audibly. "Yeah, it's this awesome place in the western United States. Great for hiking, if you bring enough water. Though you have to watch out for the rattlesnakes. Venomous predators. In a valley named after death. Is a recreational area." Professor Clixon's moisture membrane was working overtime. "Oh yeah. Earth's full of cool places like that. Anyway, where do I sign up for classes? I'm really interested in comparative xenobiology. Been reading about it since I was a kid." As Miri 7 processed the registration, Professor Clixon watched the human chatting casually with a nearby group of methane-breathing students. He'd read the reports about humans, of course. Everyone had. But somehow they'd failed to capture this cheerful, apparently indestructible being who treated lethal environments as tourist destinations and deadly predators as minor inconveniences. For the first time in his academic career, Professor Clixon wondered if perhaps they'd made a terrible mistake in classifying humans as a non-threatening species. He had no idea how right he was. 3 weeks into the semester, Professor Clixon's Advanced Planetary Studies class was proceeding exactly as planned. Until it wasn't. Today, he announced to the class, his membrane quivering with academic enthusiasm, "We begin our student presentations on homeworld classifications. Each of you will explain your planet's designation and its significance in the galactic community. First up is..." "Oh." He paused, looking at his holoscreen. "Zach Thompson." Zach bounded up to the front of the classroom, carrying an ancient data device he called a laptop. The other students watched with mild interest. Most had gotten used to the human's presence, though they still found his constant movement unsettling. "Thanks, Professor. So I'm here to talk about Earth, which is currently classified as..." Zach pulled up his first slide, then frowned. "Ha, that's weird. Is there a problem, Mr. Thompson?" "Yeah, there seems to be a mistake in the database. It says Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. The classroom erupted in laughter. While various species appropriate expressions of amusement, the crystalloids vibrated, the energy beings pulsed, and the methane breathers released amused bubbles. Professor Clixon checked his own database. No, that's correct. Earth is indeed a Class 12 Deathworld. Though I must admit, given your species' relatively peaceful nature, we've been considering a reclassification too. But that's way too low, Zach interrupted. Have you guys actually looked at Earth's specifications? We should be at least a Class 15 minimum. The laughter stopped. I'm sorry, squeaked Valterra, a floating jellyfish-like student from the water worlds of Hydrix. Did you just say Class 15? Well, yeah. Look at the criteria. Zach pulled up a new slide. Class 12 only accounts for moderate geological instability and basic predator ecosystems. Earth has active plate tectonics, which means constant earthquakes and volcanic activity. We've got weather systems that can level cities, oceans that can swallow continents. And that's just the planet trying to kill us. Wait till you see our wildlife. Professor Clixon's moisture membrane went into overdrive. Mr. Thompson, perhaps we should. Oh, and check this out. Zach clicked to the next slide, showing a typical Earth thunderstorm. This happens like all the time. The atmosphere just starts throwing electricity around. We make little metal rods to catch it because it keeps setting stuff on fire. The methane breathers huddled together protectively. One of the energy beings had to excuse itself to the hall. And this is a honey badger, Zach continued cheerfully, showing an image that made several students recoil in horror. They're these awesome little guys that just don't care about anything. Completely immune to most venoms, will fight literally anything, and sometimes eat bees for fun. The bees. Oh man, wait till I tell you about the bees. That's quite enough. Professor Clixon's voice cracked slightly. Mr. Thompson, are you saying that humans evolved on this planet? Voluntarily? Well, yeah, where else would we come from? Though I guess a lot of us do live in cities now, which is probably why you classified us wrong. But even our cities are pretty intense. Like this one time in Chicago. Class dismissed. Professor Clixon announced suddenly. Everyone except Mr. Thompson, please evacuate. I mean, exit the classroom in an orderly fashion. The students didn't need to be told twice. They fled in various states of panic, except for Valterra, who lingered by the door with an expression that, despite being on a jellyfish-like face, could only be described as fascination. As the last student floated out, Professor Clixon turned to Zach, who was still happily clicking through pictures of Earth's most terrifying features. Mr. Thompson, we need to have a serious discussion about your planet's classification, and perhaps about humanity in general. Sure thing, Professor. Want to see some pictures of Australia first? Professor Clixon's moisture membrane gave up entirely and shut down in self-defense. The emergency faculty meeting was not going well. Let me get this straight. Dean Quantum Flux buzzed, her energy form flickering with agitation. The human's presentation was not, as we initially suspected, an elaborate prank. Professor Clixon, newly equipped with a backup moisture membrane, shook his head. I've verified everything. The geological activity, the atmospheric discharge phenomena, the biological hazards. It's all true. If anything, he understated several points. Miri 7's processors whirred anxiously. According to my calculations, 73% of Earth's surface is covered in a highly corrosive dihydrogen monoxide solution. Oh, you mean the ocean? Zach chimed in helpfully from his seat. Yeah, they're pretty great for surfing. Though you do have to watch out for the sharks, and the box jellyfish, and the blue-ringed octopi, and the sea snakes, and the cone snails. Please stop listing things, Professor Clixon begged. Valterra, who had somehow managed to get invited to the faculty meeting, drifted closer to Zach. But how do humans survive in such conditions? Oh, we just kind of deal with it. Like, see this? Zach pulled up his sleeve to show a scar. Got this climbing Mount Rainier. It's this awesome volcano that could basically explode at any time. The ice fields have these hidden crevasses that you can fall into if you're not careful. Super fun weekend trip. The faculty stared in horror at both the scar and the casual way Zach described its acquisition. Weekend trip. Dean Quantum Flux's energy form dimmed considerably. You do these things for recreation. Well, yeah, you should see what people do for extreme sports. Like free solo climbing, that's when you climb huge cliffs without any safety equipment. Or wingsuit flying, where you jump off mountains in this special suit that lets you glide really fast between rocks before pulling your parachute. Oh, and there's this thing called bull running. Stop, Professor Clixon's new membrane was already showing signs of strain. Mr. Thompson, are you saying humans deliberately seek out additional dangers beyond those inherent to your planet? I mean, not everyone. Some people prefer less intense hobbies like keeping venomous snakes as pets or storm chasing, or... Those are the less intense hobbies. Miri 7's voice had jumped 2 octaves. Well, sure, nobody's really in danger with those. Usually Zack grinned. Now cave diving, that can get pretty wild. Valtara's tentacles waved excitedly. Please tell me more about this cave diving. Perhaps Dean Quantum Flux interrupted firmly. We should focus on the immediate concerns, such as the fact that we have apparently admitted a member of a species that considers lethal situations to be entertainment. Oh, that reminds me, Zack pulled out his phone. Check out this video of my little cousin's first skateboard trick. She's only 6, but she's already doing these awesome jumps. The faculty watched in mute horror as a small human child deliberately launched herself into the air on a primitive wheeled device. She's fine, Zack added quickly, noting their expressions. Just broke her arm. Kids bounce back from that stuff super quick. She was back on the board in like 6 weeks. Your young deliberately injure themselves as part of their development process. Professor Clixon's voice was barely a whisper. How else are they going to learn their limits? Zack looked genuinely puzzled. Besides, broken bones make them stronger. That's just basic biology. Valtera had moved so close she was practically touching Zack's shoulder. Fascinating. Do all human children engage in such resistance-building exercises? We try to encourage them to be careful. But yeah, pretty much. I mean, you can't keep kids in a bubble. They've got to learn how to handle themselves in a tough world, you know. The faculty did not. In fact, no. Several of them were beginning to wish they never had. I believe Dean Quantum Flux said carefully that we need to seriously reconsider our classification of both Earth and humanity, and perhaps invest in some additional security measures. Oh hey, speaking of security, Zack brightened. Wait until you hear about how we used to hunt mammoths. Professor Clixon's backup membrane gave up and joined its predecessor in shutdown mode. News travels fast in a galactic university, especially when that news involves a species that apparently treats death-defying activities as casual entertainment. By lunchtime, the cafeteria had developed a clear divide. Most students maintained a safety perimeter around Zack's table, while Valtera hovered nearby, bombarding him with questions. So your skeletal structure is actually inside your body, she asked, her tentacles writhing with excitement. And it repairs itself when damaged. Yeah, bones are pretty cool, Zack replied, attempting to open what the cafeteria insisted was a food container. Though the healing part can be annoying. My dad had to have his arm rebroken once because it healed wrong after a mountain biking accident. The nearby crystalloid students vibrated in horror at the casual mention of intentional skeletal reconstruction. Hey, Zack called out to Miri 7, who was monitoring the situation from a safe distance. Any chance you could help me with this container? I think it's stuck. That container, Miri 7 explained, is designed to withstand up to 2,000 newtons of force. It requires the cafeteria's quantum unsealer too. There was a small pop as Zack simply twisted it open. The cafeteria went silent. Thanks anyway, he said, peering into the container. Though I think they gave me the wrong thing. This looks like raw plasma. That, Professor Clixon said weakly from the faculty table, is a Class 7 power cell. It's not food. The container must have been mislabeled. Oh, sorry about that. Zack stood up, holding the exposed power cell. I'll just take this back to the counter. Don't move. Miri 7's warning came too late. Zack tripped over one of the cafeteria's gravity modulators, sending the power cell flying. Several students phased out of normal space in panic. Professor Clixon's third backup membrane of the day began emergency shutdown procedures. Without thinking, Zack dove forward, rolled, and caught the power cell inches from the ground. No worries, he grinned, standing up and brushing himself off with his free hand. Quick reflexes run in the family. My mom's a firefighter, and she's always saying, He stopped, noticing that half the cafeteria's occupants had either fled, hidden, or evolved emergency defense mechanisms on the spot. Is everything okay? Okay, Professor Clixon had apparently given up on moisture membranes entirely. You just handled an exposed power cell that operates at 10,000 degrees Kelvin. Is that hot? Sorry, I'm still getting used to alien measurements. Hey, speaking of hot things, have you guys heard about this Earth sport called volcano boarding? It's where you... Security to the cafeteria. Dean Quantum Flux's voice boomed over the intercom. Initiate Deathworld containment protocols. Ada Man Zack sighed, carefully placing the power cell on a table. This is just like that time at Earth summer camp when I accidentally started a small forest fire. Though to be fair, nobody told me that you weren't supposed to pet the strange glowing fungi. Valterra, who had watched the entire incident with increasing enthusiasm, darted forward. You must tell me more about this summer camp. It sounds delightfully hazardous. Before Zack could answer, a squadron of security drones surrounded him, their containment fields humming ominously. Now came a calm voice from the doorway. Perhaps we're overreacting a bit. Everyone turned to see Administrator Nexus, the head of Galactic University's new species integration department, gliding into the cafeteria. Her crystalline form sparkled with ancient wisdom and bureaucratic authority. After all, she continued, according to Mr. Thompson's earlier presentation, this level of physical capability is quite normal for humans. In fact, I believe he mentioned something about their young engaging in similar activities as part of their standard development process. Oh yeah, Zack nodded enthusiastically. This is nothing compared to high school gym class, though I guess most schools don't do the lava pit exercises anymore. Insurance reasons, you know. Administrator Nexus's crystalline structure briefly clouded with confusion before she regained her composure. Yes, well, perhaps we should continue this discussion in my office. And Mr. Thompson. Yes, Administrator. Please leave the power cell here. And no more stories about lava pits until we've had a chance to review your species classification thoroughly. As security escorted Zack out, Valterra trailing behind like an excited puppy made of jellyfish, Professor Clixon turned to Miri 7. Begin recording, he croaked. New research proposal: humanity evolution's practical joke, or nature's warning signal, and please order me a case of emergency membranes. I have a feeling we're going to need them. The emergency classification review hearing was going about as well as could be expected, which is to say, not well at all. So let me be clear, Chief Investigator Quantum Pulse, no relation to Dean Quantum Flux Pulse sternly. You're saying that not only do humans regularly survive these so-called natural disasters, but they actively study them. Storm chasers are super important for research, Zack protested from his containment chair, which he had politely agreed to sit in despite being able to break free with minimal effort. How else would we learn about tornado behavior? Plus, the footage is amazing for educational documentaries. Educational. You show recordings of these atmospheric devastation events to your young. Well, yeah. Kids love that stuff. My nephew's favorite show is about extreme weather. He's 4 and can already name like 12 different types of hurricanes. Several members of the review board flickered in distress. If I may, Valterra interjected, floating forward. I've spent considerable time studying our human exchange student, and I believe we're approaching this all wrong. Oh, Chief Investigator Quantum Pulse sparked skeptically. Do enlighten us. Consider this: we've been seeing humanity's resilience as a threat. But isn't it actually an incredible opportunity? Here's a species that not only survives what we consider unsurvivable, but thrives in it. They've developed their entire civilization while dealing with conditions that would destroy most of our worlds. That's what concerns us, rumbled Director Graviton, their massive gas-based form swirling anxiously. But look at what they've achieved, Valterra's tentacles gestured enthusiastically. They built spacefaring technology on a planet that regularly tries to kill them. They developed medicine while surrounded by lethal predators. They created art and music and literature while dealing with everything from solar radiation to atmospheric electricity. Don't forget the supervolcano under Yellowstone, Zack added helpfully. That could go off any time and basically end civilization as we know it. Want to see some vacation photos from there? Perhaps not right now, Professor Clixon interrupted quickly, his newest membrane already showing signs of stress. My point, Valterra continued, is that humanity's apparent death wish is actually an incredible drive to explore, learn, and overcome obstacles. They don't seek out danger because they're reckless, they do it because they refuse to be limited by their environment. Yes, Zach beamed. Like my sister who's studying to be a deep-sea researcher. She's going to live in this underwater lab near a volcanic vent to study extremophile bacteria. Mom's super proud, though she keeps reminding her to check her oxygen tanks more often than the last time. The last time Director Graviton's gaseous form condensed slightly. Oh, it wasn't that bad. The emergency protocols worked exactly like they were supposed to, and she only got minor nitrogen narcosis. Made for a great thesis chapter. Valterra bobbed excitedly. See? They turned potential disasters into research opportunities. How many of our species would even consider living next to a volcanic vent for science? None, because we have functioning survival instincts, muttered someone from the back of the room. Exactly, Valterra's tentacles waved triumphantly. But humans do it anyway. And look at the results. Their scientific understanding of extreme environments is unprecedented. Their medical technology had to evolve to deal with constant injuries. Their engineering had to account for natural disasters. They've turned their planet's hostility into a crucible for advancement. The review board exchanged troubled looks, which is quite an achievement when most of them didn't have conventional faces. Plus, Zach added brightly, all that stuff makes us really good at emergency response. Like if something goes wrong on campus, wouldn't you want someone around who's used to dealing with disasters? He has a point, Administrator Nexus noted. During today's cafeteria incident, Mr. Thompson's quick reactions prevented what could have been a significant power cell breach. After he caused the incident in the first place, Chief Investigator Quantum Pulse pointed out. True, Valterra conceded, but name another species that could have caught it. We're so focused on the fact that humans can survive things that would kill us. We're missing the fact that this makes them uniquely qualified to help in situations where we couldn't survive. Interesting perspective, Administrator Nexus mused. Mr. Thompson, your species' casual relationship with danger aside, how do humans generally feel about helping others in crisis situations? Oh, we love that stuff, Zach grinned. There's this thing called the Cajun Navy where people just hop in their boats during hurricanes to rescue complete strangers. And you should see what happens in cities after earthquakes. Everyone just starts digging through rubble to find survivors. It's like a big community event. You treat disaster response as a social activity, Professor Clixon's membrane twitched. Sure. Nothing brings people together like a good catastrophe. Well, except maybe sports riots, but those are more of a cultural tradition. Perhaps Administrator Nexus interrupted smoothly. We should focus on the immediate matter at hand. The board will need time to consider all this new information. Mr. Thompson, please refrain from any more exciting activities until we reach a decision. No problem. Though I did promise some classmates I'd explain how humans used to hunt by literally chasing animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. It's called persistence hunting, and... Meeting adjourned, announced Chief Investigator Quantum Pulse rather hastily. As the review board fled. Filed out, Valterra drifted closer to Zach. While we wait for their decision, would you tell me more about this persistence hunting? It sounds absolutely terrifying. Sure. It all started because humans are really good at sweating. Professor Clixon's latest membrane gave up and joined its predecessors in early retirement. The official reclassification notice for Earth and humanity set several galactic university records. Fastest unanimous decision by the review board, achieved primarily because no one wanted to sit through more of Zach's fun Earth facts. Most emergency membrane replacements required during a single review process. First time a species had its danger classification upgraded by request of its own representative. Only time the phrase voluntarily lives near supervolcanoes for fun appeared in an official document. I still think Class 15 is lowballing it, Zach commented, reading through the notice in Administrator Nexus's office. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the really dangerous stuff, like Australian wildlife or Chicago traffic, or Black Friday shopping. The classification is final, Mr. Thompson, Administrator Nexus said firmly, her crystalline form glowing with what might have been amusement or terror. It was hard to tell with crystalloids. Though I must inform you that your presentation has had some unexpected consequences. Oh. We've received 17 emergency applications from various disaster response organizations hoping to recruit human students. The Volcanic Studies Institute has offered full scholarships for any humans willing to join their research team. And the Extreme Environment Exploration Corp has requested an entire exchange program. Cool. My little cousin would love that. She's really into extreme sports lately. Last week she tried to. Perhaps. Administrator Nexus interrupted hastily. We should focus on the immediate implications. The board has decided that having a human on campus actually provides valuable emergency response capabilities. Therefore, you're being appointed as the official catastrophe management consultant for the university. Awesome. Does this mean I can still do my presentation on Earth's extreme sports? I've got some great footage of base jumping. Under strictly controlled conditions, she added quickly, and preferably with medical staff on standby. Professor Clixon has already gone through his entire year's supply of moisture membranes. Speaking of the Professor, Valterra drifted into the office, her tentacles waving excitedly. He's approved my research proposal. I'm going to study human adaptation mechanisms. Zach's already agreed to take me surfing next summer. You do understand that Earth's oceans are filled with creatures that could kill you instantly, Administrator Nexus asked. I know, Valterra pulsed with enthusiasm. Isn't it fantastic? Don't worry, Zach assured them. We'll start with the small waves, though there is this really great spot near some active underwater volcanoes. Administrator Nexus's crystalline form briefly flickered, a gesture that in crystalloid culture typically meant I'm getting too old for this. Oh, and the best part, Valterra continued. The xenobiology department is organizing a field trip to Earth. We're going to visit something called a petting zoo and then observe a phenomenon humans call tornado season. A field trip, Administrator Nexus's voice carried a hint of panic. To Earth. Yeah, it'll be great, Zach grinned. My hometown's right in Tornado Alley. Plus it'll be during hurricane season, so if we're lucky. The rest of his sentence was lost as Administrator Nexus hastily excused herself to draft an urgent memo about updating the university's insurance policies. As Zach and Valterra left the office, chatting enthusiastically about the relative merits of volcano boarding versus hurricane surfing, a small group of students quickly cleared a path, maintaining what they hoped was a safe distance from the cheerful Deathworlder and his apparently suicidal new friend. Meanwhile, in his office, Professor Clixon was placing an order for industrial-strength moisture membranes in bulk. Somehow, he had a feeling this was just the beginning of the university's adventures with humanity. And in the administrative archives, a small update was made to Earth's official classification file, adding a new warning label: caution, indigenous species considers lethal conditions to be fun, approach with extreme caution, and a robust insurance policy. Below that, someone had added a handwritten note, and for the love of all things sacred, don't let them tell you about their extreme sports.